Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, hazardous weather graphic again here, and we've got flood watch continues, still a flood watch here for the third day in a row now for the AKwx River and around Huslia, the lake near Huslia, for continued possibilities of minor flooding occurring, and that's out through 4 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. So moving on to the next graphic, another perspective there. Fire danger, this area about the same through here as it was yesterday, a little not much different. Still the rains we've had have shut it down. Any fire danger here of a high or extreme nature across the Tanana Valley, actually from the White Mountains southward, really not much at all. And this is still the kind of a dry zone here, hasn't really picked up much precipitation. There are the Yukon Flats from the border across the AKwx Valley, northern half of the AKwx Valley, and then ends there in the Kobuk Valley. And moving from there to the satellite imagery, here's that band of clouds that's finally starting to shift southward after stalling out there across the central, actually across the central part of the state, in the Tanana Valley into the 40-mile country. And precipitation amounts the last 12 hours were much lighter, just a couple tenths of an inch now up in the on the north side of the Alaska range. But some moisture did get down in the Copper River Basin. 1 to 2 tenths fell in some areas, Galena over, or Gulkana, onto the east there in the last 12 hours. So some of that moisture did get south of the mountains and give some wetting rains in that area. Lighter amounts, a few hundredths of an inch here getting into areas of the Matanuska-Susitna Valley. Palmer picking up 1/2 of an inch in Anchorage. And about that same amount wise out here to the west and back to the northwest there. And this whole feature shifting slowly southward and tending to dissipate, especially from what it was 2 days ago with a heavier precipitation occurring up over the Tanana Valley. You can see clouds breaking out, sunshine breaking out actually along the Brooks Range, and especially the north slope. Again, that low cloud deck burning back toward the coastline through the afternoon, and some more rainfall pushing into the southern southeast coast associated with this mass of clouds here. Main push off to the east-northeast south of the area, so this kind of slowly rotating up and stalling out over the central and southern southeast coast. And that made for a cloudy, kind of unsettled, damp day with heaviest precipitation amounts over the southern areas, anywhere from 1 to 3/10 of an inch, and just 2/100 of an inch falling at Juneau today. So it's much lighter to the north on the rainfall and more scattered than it was to the south. Even the southern areas didn't pick all that much up. And generally cloudy, maybe a few breaks here along the North Gulf Coast today. Southern Cook Inlet, a little bit of sunshine, as well as Bristol Bay, especially off the coast there, clearing out. Even inland areas seeing some sunshine, and showers around Kodiak Island. And on the chart today, you can see the clearing here. Looked like a pretty sunny day for Nunivak Island and the Yukon Delta into Bristol Bay. Clear skies actually even getting down possibly into the eastern Aleutians here and to the south. Kodiak Island, some clouds along the east coast there. Otherwise, pretty nice back across Shelikof Strait up into Cook Inlet. Then we have this zone of showers and thunderstorms developing actually along this cloud band right there. Thunderstorms had broken out here just recently, and also to a lesser extent in these areas. So there's a line of convection heading slowly southward toward the Alaska range. They're crossing the Tanana Valley. Isn't a huge outbreak, but there was a pretty consistent zone of lightning strikes showing up there. Otherwise, some breaks here, northeast Gulf of Alaska, possibly into the Yakutat area, isolated showers over the northern panhandle, and then that becomes more of a general rain over the south associated with this low just southwest of the Queen Charlotte's there. Only 1,003 millibars, so wind's not a factor at all. A little breezy eastern Arctic coast, but again, nothing too strong, and patchy areas of fog all along the coastline there. in toward a little bit of drizzle bearing straight down towards St. Lawrence Island and maybe around the Pribilofs, but not too bad, mostly west of St. Paul and St. George. High pressure out here over the western Bering, holding this front back, and that front isn't too strong, but it is spreading some rain into the western Aleutians, and winds picking up to 20-25 knots or so, and that's about it. Moving on to tonight, you'll see that rain shield advances slowly eastward, just barely reaching Kiska Island, so it's going to stay basically dry around Adak. Atka, though, could pick up some drizzle, fog, lower flying conditions here along this weak trough. That'll also affect the eastern Aleutians and the north side of the western Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise, not much effect there in Bristol Bay. Still some clearing showing up along the coastline all the way up into Norton Sound, and actually all the way to the northwest coast. Could see some clearing tonight with dry conditions, but low clouds and fog possible anywhere over the Bering Sea, through the Strait, and up and around the Arctic coast here again tonight. Looks like less gradient, so winds will drop off a little bit there for the east side, and it'll stay light on the west side. Generally variably to mostly clear here over the Brooks Range North Slope, although those low clouds will be creeping back southward here as the evening or later tonight and early tomorrow, or actually the cooler part of the day progresses. And then they'll retreat again tomorrow during the day with daytime heating. Otherwise, scattered isolated thunderstorms and showers on the decrease here, but tending to persist throughout the night tonight along this zone here. Clearing south of that, Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula, starting to clear out Kodiak Island. Dry night tonight with light winds. And showers continue here. This low still over the Queen Charlotte, circulating moisture in, keeping, could be some moderate showers, are pretty continuous, numerous over the southern southeast coast, and really isolated, almost ending here to the north, some clearing around Yakutat. And for the Monday outlook, kind of got a series of troughs in southwest flow aloft. There's still a weak upper level low trough right across the northern panhandle there, so the southwest flow is going to keep showers in the forecast over the southern areas. That's where the best chance will be, at least through tomorrow, and even scattered showers and mostly cloudy skies, cooler temperatures up to the north into the, maybe even the eastern Copper River Basin zone there around the Wrangell Mountains, maybe a chance of showers on the North Gulf Coast. And then we've got a trough here from a 1,008 millibar low, really just a thermal low here, trailing southwestward. Pretty good chance of some thunderstorms into northeast Bristol Bay, which maybe will slip on down to King Salmon. That's just a possibility. And up along the Alaska Range there into the northern Kuskokwim Valley, and actually there's chance of a thunderstorm developing over the Susitna Valley, possibly tomorrow afternoon. Otherwise, temperatures, mostly sunny skies, anywhere from 70 to 75 over a good portion of the central and eastern interior. It looks like 70-degree weather extend all the way down into the lower Yukon and Kuskokwim River Valley areas, and light northerly winds. That's going to push the cloud deck. So Togiak Bay should be mostly clear. Even Cape Newenham will be right on the edge of the clouds there in the fog at times there for Nunivak Island. Could see some sunshine over St. Lawrence Island. Bering Strait probably foggy. Eastern and central Arctic coast, periods of fog, low clouds, but dry. And the west side has the best chance of sun in the Noatak Valley there. Out west, low pressure, rain being held back by high pressure here over the central and eastern Bering Sea. And that's really, you can see the rain doesn't even reach Adak through tomorrow. So moving on to the outlook for Tuesday. Still that front holding back to the west there. Now the rainfall advances a little bit farther to the east, but still not quite reaching the Adak area, although your winds are going to swing around, become out of the southeast, but only in the 10 to 20 mile per hour range. Light variable winds here over the entire eastern Bering Sea. That's going to make for, again, low clouds, fog. Could occur anywhere there, lots of IFR. Also could be some clearing areas out there as well, as we've seen the last few days. And especially here along off the coast there where that offshore flow, could see some clearing through here, but then picking up moisture across the water and low clouds and fog on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Should be pretty good on the south side, Sand Point, maybe some partial clearing. Looks like a mostly sunny day Tuesday coming up for Kodiak Island with light winds. And now that trough set up more across southern Alaska. So that's where the mostly cloudy skies will be, with the best chance of showers down here. Thunderstorms possible from the southwest mountains, actually up across the Kuskokwim Valley. Just isolated up here farther to the north. Basically dry north slope and much of the northern interior. Again, highs call it upper 60s to lower 70s, maybe a little bit of cooling, but really probably the same thing, so 70 to 75 will cover it. And showers continue with a weak upper trough and the flow just right to keep showery conditions for the next couple of days across the southeast coast, with the heaviest amounts looks like over the south. And for temperatures, lows tonight, 45 to 50 in the central interior into the northern Kuskokwim Valley, and then near 40 out along the coast, 45 to 52 for the Panhandle, lower 30s for the Arctic coast. Highs in the 30s up there. Interior here, you can see highs in the upper 60s and mid 70s. 70 or 65 to 72 for the south central Alaska area, 50s for the Panhandle, except warmer, maybe 66 up toward Haines and Skagway. Following morning lows, not much change, lower 30s on the Arctic coast, 40s to near 50 over the interior, followed by highs again, 65 to 75.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather, not much change out here over the Bering Sea and Aleutians, mostly IFR there. Marginal up towards St. Lawrence Island, back into the IFR, Norton Sound, through the Strait and into Kotzebue Sound, then back to marginal, and then IFR there from about, we'll say Wainwright eastward, VFR over the northeast and north central interior. Marginal VFR here to start in most areas across southern Alaska, IFR, southern Kodiak Island, up in across the Gulf, and then remaining off the southeast coast. And for the afternoon, marginal VFR lingers right along the outer coastline of the Panhandle and up to the Coast Range here, the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound. IFR hanging across Montague Island and then southwestward on the east side of Kodiak. Good VFR here over interior Alaska, and IFR lingering central Arctic coast, and no change out over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. And for Tuesday morning, no change over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, except a little bit more in the way of IFR here, Bristol Bay out to the southeast Bering. IFR into the a short distance eastward across the Yukon Delta, otherwise up through the Strait, back along the Arctic coast, VFR in the interior. And possible IFR here lifting up into Prince William Sound and back down across southern Cook Inlet with the Panhandle staying VFR. This must be low stuff they threw in there for the morning for the Panhandle there of the IFR. And that's gone by afternoon, so that's probably exactly what that was for. And otherwise marginal hanging along the coastline through the day. IFR there, northern Gulf of Alaska to Cordova or so around Cape Yakataga. Good VFR in the interior. And again, about the same out over the Bering Sea through the Strait, and the IFR retreating somewhat back along mainly the central eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And for passes, Anaktuvik and Adigan, both looking VFR throughout the day on Monday, with Lake Clark and Merrill looking good. Maybe some showers around, but all again VFR type showers. Rainy VFR. Windy, open, and Isabel as well, north and south entrances through the pass, VFR. Mentasta starting out marginal and then becoming VFR, probably during the morning hours, definitely in the afternoon, and Tanita, VFR. And for Portage, VFR, and Chilkoot and White, VFR. Looking at the freezing levels, we've got 4,000 feet here, just east of Kodiak, up across the Gulf in the northern Panhandle. Still a weak upper level trough extending across this area here, and then the higher pressure aloft bumps it up to 8,000 feet over the west central interior, and then back down to 4,000 over the central Bering, and then edging up to about 6,000 for the western Aleutians and Bering. And then for icing, nothing significant here across just all of Alaska until you get out west of Kiska Island, and then that next system pushing bare threat of some light to very isolated moderate rime above 6,000 feet. And for the jet stream, high pressure aloft here, ridging up through the central Aleutians and then bulging in over the interior here, that giving offshore flow aloft across southern Alaska here, and then 70 knotters coming in ahead of that next system with the next front into the western Aleutians. Otherwise, the main jet well to the south of the Panhandle across Vancouver Island. At 9,000 feet, again, big area high pressure centered just southwest of St. Lawrence Island, ridging all the way down south of the Aleutians. And we've got north to northeast, 5 to 15, maybe up to 20 knots here locally on down toward Togiak Bay. Otherwise, light winds, southern Alaska, light winds 5 to 15 knots for the Panhandle there, as well as North Slope, Arctic coast, maybe 15 possibly. there off the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and then Bering Sea, really light and variable under the ridge. But on the increase here, 20 increasing to 30 knots. Again, that's going to be mostly Amchitka or Kiska Island westward towards Shimia, and that same pattern at 3,000 feet here, 20 to 25 coming in, and otherwise light winds under the ridge axis here, which extends all the way up across the north slope, looking 10 to 15 knots. So stronger easterlies will remain just north of the eastern Arctic coast. Light winds, Gulf of Alaska and Panhandle, 5 to maybe 5 to 10 knots here from the southeast interior all the way down across the southeast coast. Northerlies only 10 to 15 here coming out of the southwest interior across the Alaska Peninsula. And turbulence, really no significant turbulence expected across the interior, although way out west with those increasing winds, could be some light to isolated moderate chop below 4,000 feet, gradually edging its way eastward.
Hello again, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service with another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. And joining me today are not just one, but two people, both with the last name Stevens, which is even more fun, but no relation. We have Eric Stevens from Dehne and George Stevens, who is a mechanical engineering student from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Awesome. And today you guys brought a really cool toy, or I should say tool, with you. It's a sandbox, but why are you guys working on a sandbox?
Well, it's part of our senior design project, and we were approached by AKwx to build this for them. They had a proof of concept that they developed about a year ago, I think, and they wanted a more robust version that they could pack onto a plane and take places, and it's a handy learning tool for kids and adults.
So you're a mechanical engineering student. You've built a traveling sandbox for the experimental program to stimulate competitive research, EPSCoR, and Dehne's facilitated this. But why do we need a traveling sandbox?
Well, the prototype was such a big hit that they decided they wanted another one, actually two, that that would be easier to travel with, possibly marketable even.
Okay, so this is a traveling sandbox that's got a lot of bits and pieces and a computer hooked up to it. What is the computer doing with the sand?
The computer actually uses a Kinect sensor to read the topography of the sand or the shape of the sand, and then the computer translates that into information which it projects using a projector onto the sand, showing topographical lines and which is representative of the shape of the sand.
Okay, so this is a live mapping tool?
Yeah. It's interactive. As you're moving your hands through it, it is actively following and changing the lines to fit what you're doing.
That sounds like something I could have in my backyard.
Yep.
It'd be a lot of fun. So you guys had to change the design a little bit to make this more Alaska-fied, right?
Yeah.
Okay, how'd you do that?
Well, the original is made out of basically lumber and Simpson strong tie type stuff, and we rebuilt it to make it lighter and basically more transportable. We can pack it down to a fairly small size, and it can be loaded onto a plane and flown anywhere in the state. Which
you guys did today. And you have plans to take this in other places of Alaska, right?
Yep, we're actually going to be headed down to Homer with it later today.
Okay, very good. Eric, how does this fit into science learning around Alaska?
Well, you know what? I think it is a tool and it is a toy, and it brings out a smile from an 8-year-old and the smile from a 48-year-old with that inner 8-year-old wanting to get out. The sandbox, it's an interactive learning tool that teaches us how topography in the 3 dimensions is related to, say, a 2-dimensional map. More about that later. Just like George was saying, it's got a Kinect sensor, not just for video games anymore. It can sense out the lay of the land there, feeds that information in the computer. Computer identifies that, sends a signal to a projector to send topographic lines to map over that lumpy ground. So you get a 3-dimensional topo map out of it. And my favorite thing about it, this is the thing that stops people at the trade show, they stop at your booth and don't leave, is that you run your hand through that sandbox and it responds in real time. It remaps the topography as you get to be Mr. Tectonic Plate Drifter there. You can make things how you want. Well, what if we made a really high mountain here and a low valley there, and the lines adjust to what you did? It's a learning tool because it shows you that connection between these two-dimensional topo lines, and what's really out in Alaska. And Alaska's a place with all kinds of topography. You know, we're from the Great Plains, where topo maps tend to be just like blank pieces of paper, but Alaska is particularly gifted in this regard, and this tool helps us, I think, learn more about our state, really.
Absolutely. And so this is going to enhance STEM learning, the science, technology, engineering, and math, in many different locations around Alaska. Then this would be something that kids and teachers can get their hands on.
It sure is. And I mentioned the it's like flypaper at a booth that, or at the Science Potpourri when we had Greg's original version of this sandbox, and that one was made out of scraps of wood, and it was a prototype. But even that one, before it had some of the refinements that George and crew have made for this newer, upscaled, maybe a 2.0 version of the sandbox, even that one was so attractive to people. It just demonstrated that this has potential to be a learning tool, an outreach tool, an education tool that now is portable and can go places in Alaska. Of course, there's only one sandbox, can't be everywhere at once, but hopefully it gets out there, gets the word out about EPSCoR and what science is being done here for Alaskans.
All right, that sounds really interesting, and I can't wait to get my hands in the sand and try this out for myself. We're going to demonstrate this here in our next segment of Alaska Weather Facts, but before we go, we want to remind you that EPSCoR, which is a new acronym for me now, but I'm going to remember this because you can follow them on Facebook and Twitter, and I invite you to do that. Alaska EPSCoR is also something that facilitates science learning at the University of Alaska around the state, and that stands for Experimental Program to Stimulate Competitive Research. So check that out, and make sure you tune in tomorrow because we're going to have the next version where we actually get our hands in the sand and check out how this works and demonstrates that topography. So for now, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and we'll see you again next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis. Again, not much different from what we saw yesterday. We still have basically thinning out here along the eastern coastline and opening up here still northward, although slowing in its advance the farther north it gets. But that general pattern is going to last for the next 4 or 5 days. And for the coastal water forecast here, pretty easy and light west at 10 knots all along the coastline. Seas running anywhere from 4 to 7 feet, lightest up in the north. And south 15 for Lynn Canal, otherwise central southern inside waters anywhere from variable to south at 10 knots or so with pretty slight seas at 2 to 3 feet. And then for Tuesday, Lynn Canal south at 10. And again, kind of a light variable wind pattern here over the central southern inside waters with slight seas 2 feet or less. And looks like light variable winds 5 to 10 knots here on the south coast and west at 10 up on the north side with seas at 5 feet. Prince William Sound, light southwest breeze tomorrow at 10 with just 2-foot seas. And the North Gulf Coast here, southwest 15, seas only 5 feet. And Barren Island, same thing, southwest at 15 with seas not too bad, 5 feet. And Kamishak Bay, Cook Inlet, all southwest, 10 knots, 1 to 2 foot seas. Following day on Tuesday, a little bit more of a breeze picks up here for Kamishak Bay as well as all of Cook Inlet, south at 15 with seas running 3 to 4 feet. And the Barren Islands stay light, south at 10, and the North Gulf Coast light as well, anywhere from west to south, breezes at 10 knots with seas running 4 feet. Prince William Sound, west at 10, seas 2 feet. Kodiak Island, southwest 20 there on the east side, and Shelikof Strait at 15 knots, and Sitkinak to Castle Cape, west at 15. And Castle Cape to Cape Saratchev, 20-knot winds out of the northwest with 5-foot seas, north at 20 on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Bristol Bay, northwest 20 and seas 4 feet. Outlook for Tuesday, southwest 15 here for Bristol Bay and northwest at 20 across the peninsula. Seas running 5 to 6 feet, but pretty light winds from Castle Cape on up to Sitkinak, southwest at 10. And generally a southwest to northwest or west-northwest breeze there across Kodiak at 10 knots with seas running 2 to 4 feet. And for the eastern Aleutians, Unalaska Island, north 10 to 15 knots. Unmak Island, southwest at 10 with seas 3 feet. And the central Aleutians here, really light winds, south at about 10 knots, seas down to 3 feet and picking up to about 20 knots, getting toward Amchitka. And it looks like small craft advisories with that front and a narrow band. There'll be 30-knot winds with 10-foot seas. Then on the next day, small craft advisories advance a little more to the east here and probably cover Amchitka Island, but not the Adak-Atka area. You're still in the light wind area there, but they'll become southeast at about 10. And that extends over to Nikolsky, but on Alaska Island, north to northwest, 15 to 20 knots, seas 4 feet. Southwest coast, northwesterlies, 20 to 25 knots there. And for the St. Matthew Island zone, southwest 15, south 10 for the Pribilofs. Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, northwest at 15. And the outlook for Tuesday, we've got small craft advisories here south of Nunivak Island, 25-knot northerlies, and south 10, pretty light winds now out in the Bering Sea in the vicinity of St. Paul, St. George, St. Matthew Island, is 10-knot winds and seas down to 3 feet. West 15, St. Lawrence Island. Up along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, we're going to hang on to a small craft advisory here for east winds at 25 knots. Otherwise, the eastern area to the central coast east at 20. Even lighter on the west side, 15-knot winds. And then from Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson, northwest 10. Cape Thompson to Wales, northwest at 20. For Tuesday, light winds here, the Chukchi Sea west at 10. Maybe a little brisker in around the Selawik Valley there in toward Kotzebue in that area, but light here from Point Hope to Cape Lisburne, southeast 10. 15-knot winds on the east or the western coast, 20. No change on the central coast, but kind of an expansion of that small craft advisory wind eastward there at 25 knots. And for tonight, look for some patchy areas of fog and low clouds. Really not much change up there tonight. Diminishing showers along that trough persisting through the night, and that reorients itself something like this, but still some showery conditions over the Copper River Basin, especially in the afternoon, and showers pretty likely over the southern panhandle, again more scattered to the north, and that continues through Tuesday as well, but mostly sunny over the central and northern interior with the best chance of showers here along this trough in the south. Not much change out west, high pressure holding over the eastern Bering.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.